Welcome to Ask Sam. In a recent episode, we talked about how humans are fundamentally emotional and not logical. There's some logical, pun intended, conclusions that we can draw from this. If we assume that humanity is emotional, then that tells us that society must therefore also be emotional and effectively crazy. And if we start looking at the world in a logical way and actually applying logic to everyday scenarios, we should start to theoretically feel that everybody else is crazy because they're acting emotionally and they have no logic to their actions. Here's the reality: that is true. The world should seem crazy to you because it fundamentally is. I say fundamentally a lot. The world is a crazy place. The majority of people think crazy things. They believe things with no reason for believing them. They trust in the worst possible people. We have governments that don't work in anyone's behalf. There's no way to get around these systems that make no sense. And yet everybody kind of looks past it and ignores the fact that these things are happening because they're emotional, and applying logic on any scale is difficult and not fun and not very productive, because what are you going to do about it? Everyone else is emotional. And that's very true. But it's important to understand that just because you're seeing truth, just because you're using logic, is not going to make you suddenly realize that there's all these brilliant people everywhere doing brilliant things and getting society to move in brilliant ways. That's not what's happening. When you look at society as a whole in a logical way, you start to say, oh my gosh, it's terrible. People make terrible decisions on an individual basis and on a collective basis every moment of every day. It's depressing in some ways, but it is empowering to know that, wow, we can step back and look at the logic and say, wait a minute, just because they did it does not mean it makes sense. If I apply logic to this, they were probably crazy. And that is generally true. And even when people are applying logic to things, they may be thinking about the fact that the people they're applying it for may not be using logic, and therefore appealing to their emotions, not their logic, is the effective tool. That's why no one ever appeals to your logic. They only appeal to your emotions. That's how things work. That's one of the reasons why the legal system in so many countries is so bad. It doesn't work from logic. It doesn't work from fact. It doesn't work from, it's supposed to in most cases, but it often doesn't. They appeal to the jury. They have impassioned speeches. Those are not things that apply in real law. If you had laws, you would simply determine, was something fact, what happened, what is the law, and you'd be done. But that's not what happens. It's all about hiring someone to get a jury to either be sympathetic or angry. And we talk about, we use those terms, a sympathetic jury. Literally a jury who overlooks the logic and feels a certain way. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be sympathetic to the plight of all people, but it is important to understand that if we were being properly logical, we should have put our sympathy into the law in the first place, not had to have sympathetic juries when we're able to pay high enough money to get the right lawyer to assemble that jury, to get rich people to get sympathy and not general people. It should be applied equally if we were being logical and thinking about it. We aren't, because we're emotional, and so we view the world but we need to evoke the right emotion kind of way rather than having the world operate logically. So when you breach that barrier and start thinking logically about more and more things, you will start to see the world seeming crazy, and you'll start to feel simple things like, wait, that doesn't make sense. I'm not sure why, but something feels off here. And it's because your brain will start to apply logic to things, and it'll start telling you, hey, I did some logic, something's wrong, start thinking about this. And it'll become more and more able to break through the barrier of your emotions, and your emotions might be as simple as saying, well, everybody does it, so it's okay. Or it wasn't something I was worried about or paying attention to. And logic may say, wait, I'm seeing gaps somewhere in the logic. You need to figure out what's wrong. Thanks for joining me. This is Ask Sam. Like, subscribe, put some comments down below, and I will see all of you next time.